So we haven't covered appraisal gap in a while, and we haven't covered it with most of the new people. And it seemed like for just a few minutes, this wasn't a big deal. And now it's coming roaring back again. So I wanted to kind of cover it. I'm entering it in Salesforce. Mortgage Coach, a different way than I used to. And one thing that I'm doing is when I do a customer presentation, the first thing that I'm doing when I do the presentation is I'm showing them the numbers that they want, right? So we talk about this in your intro call. What payment do you want? What cash to close do you want? Those sort of things that you're always going to do in your first Mortgage Coach presentation. Whenever we narrow down the product, before anything else happens, I am doing this Mortgage Coach, this appraisal gap presentation for the client on kind of their ideal circumstance. And I'm doing it with the agent and the client together, if at all possible, because I'm still finding that a lot of agents, even if you're doing repeat business with them, don't really get the mental math of what an appraisal gap looks like. So just showing them this, that you can go through a circumstance where your cash to close and your payment, no matter what happens, is almost exactly the same, is really powerful to show them. And because customers, especially new customers, at least the first couple of offers they make, they don't want to do an appraisal gap, because in their mind, they're automatically thinking that if I do a $40,000 appraisal gap, no matter what happens, I'm coming to closing with $40,000 more. And so just going through this is really powerful to show them, because, and just a reminder that our loan is based on the lower of the appraised value or the sales price, but that only affects our loan to value, which can slightly affect the terms, is how I explain it. So I'll just pick this one. I'm sorry, I said Natalie. I just picked this one as a $600,000 sales price, but the way I'm doing it in Mortgage Coach now is I'm adjusting the purchase price to the appraised value. Instead of, I was doing it a different way, but what this is I'm explaining that we do it on the lower of the purchase price or the appraised value. So this is 15% down with no gap on a $600,000 sales price, 5% gap, which is $30,000, and then an 8% gap, which is going to be $48,000. Typically what you're seeing is that they're going to make the gap up to the difference between the list price and what you're offering. And I'm seeing a lot of $50,000 listing for 550 something offers working at 600. So that's why I did this one in particular. I'm keeping my loan amount the same, all the options, with the exception of this one, which is financed MI. So loan amount 510, base loan amount 510 with financed MI. Rate, if you have MI on these loans, is going to stay the same across the board. Term, of course, the same. And then down to what matters is the monthly payment here. So the first thing on the show is that our cash to close on all these options is staying exactly the same. And I do this exactly to the penny so that the customer sees that there's really no change in that cash to close. And I'm going and then I'm going to show them the payment. So the only thing changing here between these options is the mortgage insurance premium. So on a 15% down with no gap, we're going to have mortgage insurance of $51 a month. And this is a well-qualified customer. They have 10%, or I'm sorry, $100,000 to put down. So the MI is not that big of a factor. When you have someone that has 3% down, of course, you can't do an appraisal gap strategy. So that's a different conversation to have, but these are well-qualified customers that actually can offer this. So on mortgage insurance, on the terms that this borrower wanted, 15% down, 100,000 at closing is $51. If the appraisal comes in $30,000 short, the only thing literally that's changing in what we're doing is that the mortgage insurance is going to go up $26 a month. So all I'm doing is saying, if you write a gap for $30,000, literally worst case scenario, all you're going to have to do is pay $25 a month more. And once you show them that, they really stop caring about what a mortgage gap is, because you can show them that the cash to close and the payment's exactly the same. And then when you're getting to something more aggressive, like a $42,000 gap, I did this one as a 8% down with financed MI. The reason I did 8% on this case situation is I'm not seeing gaps that are coming in more than 10% or at this point, but also I can finance the MI and still do a 95% loan for someone that's not a first-time home buyer. Because typically if you have this much money down, you're not a first-time home buyer. And I'm financing the mortgage insurance back into the loan. So the difference here, best case scenario and worst case scenario between those two options is $20 a month. So showing them and the realtor that cash to close across the board is 20 the same and the payment is $20 a month difference, and kind of a worst case scenario for a $48,000 gap is where I want to show them this. The way I'm presenting this is in Mortgage Coach, is in the Mortgage Coach presentation. I'm going to go in and in the closing cost, what I'm doing is I'm lowering the sales price, like I said, and all I'm doing is going in the closing cost, putting in other, and the other is cash on an appraisal gap that the borrower is paying. So that's how I'm matching all the terms, and I'm keeping it where the borrower is seeing what the actual, saying, again, I need to pay more attention to that. The borrower is seeing what the actual loan to value is across the board, because our loan to value is changing. Our down payment is changing, but our cash to close is not. So keeping this so the borrower actually sees what's going on, and then just doing it with this other cash to close here. And then the same thing for the 8% gap, changing it to a single premium that's financed. And then the other is $48,000 cash. So just showing that as a circumstance. And then what I do is when the offer is made, I'm going to take this and update it to reflect the actual offer that they made. And usually we'll put in here, sometimes they're doing an unlimited appraisal gap. So you can't quite show what unlimited means, right? But getting a realistic number from the agent on what that's going to appraise for, and putting in the circumstances where it appraises at value, it appraises at these different levels, so that when they're making that offer, they're really confident going in that if something goes sideways, it really doesn't affect them. So you just lower the stress level. And that way, whenever you're calling the agent and saying, like, the listing agent, I'm also explaining this to the listing agent that yes, they're putting 15% down. Yes, they're running a $50,000 gap. Yes, we have enough money to cover it, and this is why. And I'm explaining this situation to the listing agent. I find that a lot of listing agents, because they do a lot of listings, they don't work on the buyer side. They still think that a gap means that the borrower has to have that much more money verified to close, regardless of how they're writing the offer. So I'll share this with the listing agent as well, just to show them that, like, we have it covered, we have everything verified, and regardless of how it comes in, there's not going to be any issues with the financing. And then I've already explained this to the borrower. So that, what we said earlier, is like trying to get these offers as close to cash as possible when you're doing a financed offer with an unlimited or a $50,000 appraisal gap, giving that comfort level that no matter what happens, basically, because you're like, you listed it for 550. Do you think it's going to appraise for 550? Yeah. Well, this is how we're covering it. There's not going to be any issue with the appraisal, and there's not going to be anybody panicking because they wrote a gap and then it actually came true. So, like I said, the main thing is whenever they make the offer is just updating this presentation. So you're showing them exactly what they can expect when that offer comes in low. We kind of did that with Haley when we were working on it, but we expected a 490 appraisal with a 510 offer, and it came in at 473, right, Haley?
A little bit lower. So we thought it was going to be 390. They offered 410 and it came in at 373. And then the list price was 365. So it came in basically barely over list price.
Yeah. So did you get that presentation email? Or?
I did. Yep. I can go ahead and share.
Oh, awesome. Okay. I'm going to stop sharing so Haley can share.
Hey, John, quick question. If you have a client that's putting 3% down, can you move to Chaffa to do an appraisal gap on it?
Yes, you can. That's a great question. And I'll cover that maybe next week or in a couple of weeks.
Okay.
This is the most common situation, but that's a really good question. Chaffa lets you use their money to cover appraisal gap. So I'll do that sort of extreme circumstance coming forward. And we looked at this on Haley's loan, but the customer didn't want to do it, at least not yet. So on Haley's loan here, and this is a real situation, we don't have the original numbers up here, but originally this borrower was putting 10% down on a $410,000 sales price, which would have been $41,000 in cash to close. So with this really big cut, Haley, why don't I let you explain it the way you're explaining it to the customer?
Yeah, so basically kind of what John and I went over yesterday, and Ashley as well, is originally, yeah, he only wanted to bring about 41,000, so about 10%. He did have funds available from the beginning, just from his prior home sale. He just didn't really want to have to clear everything out. Obviously now with the appraisal gap, he's pretty much going to have to, unfortunately, if he wants to, keep the deal and keep the house without going Chaffa. So basically that conversation is going to be, again, just pretty straightforward. He can either do like a 3% down option and bring about $50,000 to closing, or do like a 5% down, since we are doing home ready, home possible. That 97% option, obviously, sorry, the 97% option would be about $50,000 at closing, since he is doing that home ready, home possible, even though he's not a first time home buyer. That's probably going to be the best option for him to, not have to bring too much more to closing than what was going to be there anyways. The other option, obviously, if he wants that lower monthly payment amount, to essentially just put 5% down and bring about 58,000 and essentially, just clear out that savings that was there. So the conversation just being more around, where do you want your monthly payment amount to be? The nice thing is that with these options, we did not have to change his rate. So we did go ahead and still lock him in at that 3.99, and that's not going to change, luckily. Just that cash to close is going to change. And really, from where we had him in the beginning, his monthly payment amount only went up about 30-40 bucks. So it really turned out actually surprisingly well to me, just because.
So what was his, can I ask you, what was the cash to close the way the offer was written? What was the cash to close?
I want to say like maybe like 45, 46, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, it was probably around that, because they were doing 10% down plus the closing cost and everything. So that's another.
So what I want you to, when you have this conversation with him, you got to show him that difference in cash to close, because that's the thing that's going to make him go, oh, that's all. Because if I'm only bringing an extra $3,000 and I get my house and the payment's 30 bucks more, I'm happy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What happens is when you're in the sales consulting, you're a consultant here. Like, this isn't, first of all, none of this has anything to do with you as a mortgage professional, right? This is everything to do with the current market conditions, the fact that he was willing to pay $410 without an appraisal gap when he wrote the offer on a $365,000 listing. That's not on you. Okay. That's on him.
Right.
He got 370. So like, your job today is to just deliver the news. It is not unfortunate and it is not bad news. So make sure that when you're talking to him, because you said, well, unfortunately, he's going to have to bring, and I know you would, I'm trusting, I'm just coaching here. Don't use the word unfortunately when you're telling him what's going on. Like, this is the deal. And honestly, it isn't that bad. Because if my old cash to close was 45 and change, and now I'm 48, almost 49, it's like, oh, it's only $3 or $4 grand. It's like, yeah, that's it. And your payment's only this. Like, use the words, it's only this much more, and it's only this.
Right. Yeah.
Because this is pretty good. This is actually pretty cool, Haley. Like, now that I hear it and I hear the old cash to close and the new cash, I'm like going, fuck, this isn't bad. I could sell this.
Yeah. No, I thought I was the same way. Like I was like, this is really freaking cool of just, because like I said, you hear 37,000 more and it's like, oh my God, like what's it gonna do to his cash to close, his monthly payment?
Yeah, and in fact, the way I would start the conversation off, have you shown this to him yet, or you're getting ready to?
Not yet. It'll be it'll be today.
The way I'd start the conversation is like, dude, I know it sucks that the value came in like that, but I have some really good news. Because in his mind, he's thinking, oh shit, I got to come up with 40 grand. Like, I can't do this.
And to be clear, this borrower and his agent never talked to her about this large appraisal gap.
Yeah, I only found out because the listing agent called me and she's like, oh, so they're upping their offer to 410. So I just want to make sure that his funds are still there. And I was like, okay, guess we're going that route now.
Yeah, and this is the perfect opportunity when you're having that conversation with the listing agent, and to send this to everybody, is that we did an appraisal gap strategy already for the client, but just to show that agent, you can say like, yeah, no matter what, we're covered here, and this is why. To give them that sort of confidence there. But yeah, Haley, add back in the original terms, the way we locked the loan as the first option, so that he can see exactly what the difference is, because this presentation in a vacuum doesn't really mean that much to them. When you show them, this is the way we locked you, this is how we're going to close, these are the options that came in, then that's, a lot more clear at this point, because I'm looking at this and I've looked at your loan and I don't remember, and he doesn't remember either, really. He's just trying to get through the process. But but absolutely what Dave said. And we talked about this on Wednesdays, rates, appraised values, all these things, they're not your problem. They're not your fault. So don't take the blame for it. Just say, great, we got the appraisal in, and it came in at this, and these are your options to move forward. Super exciting. You get to buy a house in Colorado in these times. And then, but it's the same as the rate conversation. Like, yes, you started shopping when it was 2,875. Now it's not. And here's what the numbers look like. Like, if you take any of that, like as like it's your fault, then the customer's going to think it's your fault. And when they think it's your fault, they're going to start shopping and start wondering what's going on, start doubting you and start doubting the market. So always, any circumstances, just have a really positive attitude about it.
Yeah, and honestly, like I'm actually really super excited for the conversation, just for that reason, that what I thought was going to be a disaster, turns out it actually really, it's going to be still, a really good chance for him to still keep the house that he really wants. So I'm excited for it. Looking forward to it, even though it was kind of a curveball per se. But no, it'll be good. It'll be good.
You're solving his problem of buying a house.
For sure. For sure.
I like I said, I think it's good. I'd be excited. Be like, dude, I got some great news. That's what I would say, because it is great news. It's great news. So don't. And again, a lot of this is the way you guys prepare to share the information. And it's not your fault. Like, if you start trying to take on the responsibility for it, it's like, well, now it's your fault. If you start saying things like, man, I'm really sorry, it's like going, what are you sorry? You didn't do any of this. You're just the person who's helping them get this done, given the current situation. And that's just a fact.
Too, yesterday when I was talking to Haley, I was like, all right, don't call your borrower yet, because we don't want to call them with a problem. We call them with the solution, and we never present a problem. We call with solutions, and that way they're not freaked out. And it also helps you get past like your moment of like, what do I do? You want to think through it all before you're presenting.
Right.
Yeah.
The other thing, Haley, is I think you're doing a really good job just in your understanding of all of this, like, and that you're not freaking out, which is really nice for me and John. And it's just something that you have to learn. Like, and you said something yesterday that's like going, hey, I'm going to learn a lot on this one. It's like, yes, you are. And that's great, because these things are, of course they're challenging.
Not everyone has an appraisal cut in their first loan.
And so it's just part of the process. This is part of what you're going through, is going through the steps. But I really admire the way you're handling it. And And like I said, I'd start the conversation off with, hey, I have some great news for you.
Yeah.
Because
Well, I was telling
even though
Ashley
the
yesterday,
appraisal
like,
didn't come in, I can show you some numbers here that I think you're going to be really happy with. I know
Yeah.
I would be.
Yeah, and I was telling Ashley and John yesterday, like, I cared less about like the appraisal gap, because yeah, that's not my fault that they offered that much, but I was just like kind of more panicking because the appraisal happened before it was supposed to happen, and I had told the borrower like, hey, yeah, like I'll tell you before when it's scheduled, and went on there yesterday and I was like, Chelsea, I think it already happened. So that was like, again, kind of a curveball. Again, another lesson for the week of what happens when appraisers don't follow the rules and go out early and when they're not supposed to.
But it's not, don't take it on as stress. Don't take the stress on of that. It happened and we have the appraisal and now we have a plan to move forward. So all good. And then just repeating myself, we're presenting this to the agents because, and this is a great thing in your discovery or in a call when you're cold calling agents and you start getting the conversation of how many offers are you writing, how many are getting accepted. If they're not getting accepted, what are the conversations around that? Because again, the agents lose sight of like what an appraisal gap means. So if you're explaining to them that like are your clients not writing appraisal gaps? Like they just don't want to, and why don't they want to? They like, why don't I show you like a strategy that they're going to get comfortable writing an appraisal gap and go through that with them because they still just don't get it. I mean, I had a conversation with somebody that works here yesterday that still didn't understand that appraisal gap did not mean that you automatically had to bring more money to closing. So very, very powerful to show this to everybody. So
Good.
Dave.
Anybody have any questions? Any other questions about these appraisal gaps? And how to deal with them and how to have this conversation. So first thing I want to do is point out Wendy's the daily dose today. The activity you're most avoiding contains your biggest opportunity. As I think about all those conversations that we were having yesterday about prospecting activity and having those 10 conversations every day and doing all the things that you have to do to get where you want to go. The activity you're most avoiding does contain your biggest opportunity. Just FYI, if you're not picking up that phone and making the calls, nothing's going to happen, right? So that's just how it is. You just have to remember that, like, okay, that's where my biggest opportunity lies. And it's been the same thing for every salesperson since the dawn of civilization. So that's just what this business is. What I want to do, John, can you pull up you want to share your screen and pull up the Mortgage Coach YouTube channel? And I want to point out just two resources that exist when it comes to having these conversations, picking up the phone, talking to a realtor, and how you go about it. And everything that was just covered by John today is a great reason to pick up the phone and call a real estate agent and ask them how they're dealing with appraisal gaps. Like, what are you finding? Like, it's just figuring out a way to strike up a conversation that would lead to an opportunity for you to ask for an appointment so that you could show somebody how we deal with appraisal gaps using Mortgage Coach and showing people how that stuff works. But there's any number of ways that you can go about it. I don't have a magic pill way that is, oh, if you say this is what's going to happen. So yesterday after some of the calls, I was like, so no, don't do that. Just do realtor appointments. Type in the word. So this is the Mortgage Coach channel. And in see that little search bar right there? I just typed in, because I didn't know what I was going to get. So I just typed in realtor appointment. And I don't know, there's like 25 videos here of how to cold call a realtor, what to say when you get a realtor on the phone, this is like classic stuff that people hear. If you talk to Giuseppe, he's like, well, I don't know why Dave Savage would rather want to interview me. I just listened to all these videos and I did what they said. So there's like all these ways that you can go about doing it. If you're waiting for the magic pill way, there isn't one. There's not a magic pill way, and there's not like the perfect script. Everybody's got a different style. Everybody's got a different approach. But picking up the only way that you're going to get any better is what I said at the beginning of this, which is give us a chance to hear some game film and tell you what you say, because like right now, just on this call, as I'm listening to everybody, I'm like going, oh yeah, how is this going? Just so you know, if you're talking on, and I'm guessing, depending on the quality of the microphone that you're using to speak to when you're on a video call like this, it sounds pretty bad if you're not using the headset, because there's a lot of echo. You're in a room with probably not a very high quality microphone on your camera. And so my recommendation would be that if you're ever talking to people on the phone and you're using Zoom or you're doing a Zoom call, is to use your headset. That's the first thing. The second thing is, for those of you that are sitting in front of a camera with a light background, you look like you're in the witness protection program and we can't see your face. And it's unlikely that your customer is going to tell you that. And they're just going to sit there and they're going to go, this is so weird, I can barely see the person's face, right? So everything that we do in sales, we're being judged constantly, okay? How we sound, how we look, how we present, how confident, how many times do we say, it's just life. It's not, I'm sorry that you're getting judged, but it's just what's happening, right? And so, John, why don't you just, for fun, type in appraisal gaps, see what we get back there. So I get this question a lot from a lot of you, and I get why I'm getting it. There's a whole bunch of reasons. Look at this: low appraisal insurance, mortgage coach black belt workshop, realtor strategies, how Denise Donahue blows the minds of a group of realtors, how to solve an
This is good. Low appraisal insurance there.
My go-to website, if I run into a challenge, my go-to website would be like, I bet you they've talked about this on Mortgage Coach, and go find a video on it and educate yourself, right? Because you have to take responsibility for the education that you're going to get. Because I don't know what you're up against. I can't sit in your office all day with anybody and just like, okay, what happened just on that? Okay, what just happened? Okay, what just happened? But if you give me a call to listen to, I can really help you. And that's one of the things that happened yesterday, where Natalie and John were able to, or a couple of days ago, where Natalie and John really, and great job, Natalie. I applaud the way that you responded to the feedback, because that's all it is. It's just feedback. We all need a feedback loop. I talked about it. It was my quote of the week from a couple of weeks ago. Everybody needs a feedback loop so that you can make adjustments and improve. That's what we're talking about. So this would be my go-to resource for like, well, what is other people saying and what are other people doing? You've got to make it your own style. And so then when it comes to a script that you're going to use, I know that Ryan Pettigrew, so Ryan, good job. I know that Ryan Pettigrew this week spent some time at home with his wife, role playing and just typing up a script that he was like using and seeing like, how does this going to go? How does this sound? What is I going to do about making phone calls to realtors? And he's addressing this very issue that we're all talking about, which is, so what are you figuring out on the way? Like, what did you say it was, Brian? And then you and I talked about something else.
Well, my main script that I'm using is just talking about their offer acceptance rate.
Right. Great. And the whole idea here is like, how's your offer acceptance rate going? Is like, I mean, we're running into issues too. What's the most common thing? I would love to hear how you guys are doing stuff. And like, yeah, you're a brand new person and you don't know them, and that, none of that matters. Like, they're just like, your goal here is to strike up a conversation that leads to an appointment, isn't it? So that's it. You got to sound confident. You got to sound like you know what you're talking about. You got to be like going, I'd love to hear what you guys are doing, and I would love to share some of the things that we do. And so what are some of the things that we do? Oh, well, I have this whole appraisal gap system that I can show you that makes the customer a little more, willing to write a bigger offer. Our Zenith certified home buyer program, unbelievable. Like, we have like a lot of listing agents. We have a really good reputation in town. A lot of listing agents get a Zenith offer and they'll just accept it because they know it's a done deal. Right? There's a whole bunch of things that you have at your disposal that you can talk about, but it requires you to have a lot of phone calls. And I don't know, because I'm starting to ask this question now, and you guys have all heard this, like, I want to know how many realtor appointments you've actually had. Like, how many real estate agent face-to-face appointments did you actually go on? And what was the result? And what's going on now? What's going on since that? Like all of this stuff is just data that you can use to get better. That's all it is. So embrace that, because like you can get better. Like that's awesome. And that's what's really powerful. I should have been doing the monthly check-ins like we did yesterday. And so I'm getting better too. So we're all in this together. I want to help you succeed, but you gotta raise your hand when you need help. And it starts with like, give me some game film, right? I don't have a magic script that I'm keeping from everybody that like, oh yeah, I gave it to Giuseppe and Chris and Jacqueline, but no one else has it. Like, oh, I don't, like, we did whatever we had to do to get appointments. That was the answer. And one of the things that we used to do on a regular basis, especially for newer realtors, like I'd love to have you come into my office sometime and show you the buyer presentation that we do for our leads. And my goal, my job, like I said last week, my goal, my job is to get your client as comfortable and as confident as possible to go out and make offers. I'd love to show you how I do that. And you know, that's just another, like, there's a million things that you can say. I don't know what you want to say exactly. And if I gave you something, here's what I want you to say every time, and it didn't work, Ryan and I have this conversation. We laugh about this all the time. It's like going, oh, well, that didn't work. It's like, okay, how many people did you fucking say it to? I got no 100%ers. I got like 20%ers or 10%ers or 5%ers or 3%ers. And if you make enough calls, if you talk to 100 realtors and 3% of them will meet with you, make a fucking 100 calls. I don't know what to tell you. I don't have a solution that's faster than make the calls. Anyway, I get fired up. All right. Thanks for listening, and thanks for letting me entertain you. Thanks, Ryan.
Thanks, everybody. I'm going to email a couple of links to y'all in a minute, and we'll post this soon. Talk some lines.
Do one other thing, like record yourself on these cameras, like record yourself in a presentation. Take a picture of you in a screenshot that so you can go back and look. Is like, how does this look? Can people see my face? How can they hear me? Right? Because a big part of this is your presentation and whether or not people are like going, man, I want to work with that guy. All right, there you go. See ya.